take over and continue, or we could aim to be very succinct. Or both.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's see if we can do that.
Okay, great. Well, with that in mind, we've got actually quite an exciting agenda here, and lots of interesting things to get through. So let's open the meeting. Do we have any additional late items?
I have one late item,
Okay.
an update from the digital roadmap working group, which I'm printing now.
Oh, are you?
Yes.
Great.
Came in 4 minutes ago, but it's wonderful.
Okay.
So that will be for just a supporting document for item 7.2. Supporting document for item 7.2.
Great. Then, do we have someone to move adoption of our May 10th meeting minutes? Ed? And second, Maureen, and all in favor? Good. Okay. Adoption minutes. I guess we don't have to approve the agenda. We're just trying to do it.
I do have to.
I think we do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's approve the agenda. Has anyone had a chance to go through the agenda, including the late item of the digital roadmap?
I'll second.
Second, and all in favor? Okay, good. Fantastic. On to the exciting bits. I'd like for anyone who hasn't met Helen Platts to introduce Helen Platts. Welcome. Is everyone aware that Helen has been hired as our Community Economic Development Officer?
Are we on?
Congratulations.
Excellent. We're on video, and it's now public. Thank
That was a fun ride. It was
We're out.
We're
Yeah. Well, we're very excited to have you, Helen. That's terrific. And of course, in reviewing our work plan, I was just reading in the back of our package here today. We have one item buried in the middle saying, subject to rural dividend funding, creating an economic development plan for Bowen Island. Here we go. Fantastic. And so, let me give you a minute just to introduce yourself to the committee, please.
I don't know where you want me to start. What would you like me to say?
Well, keep it short.
Oh my, okay.
Name maybe what you're doing right now, and what's the most exciting thing that you have for
I'm
us
also
coming
kind of
up.
curious, like what relevant background you have. Like,
Yeah,
that's kind of,
okay.
I know I
That's
think
sort
you
of-
in a different capacity, so I'd love to know, just very briefly,
It's
what
gonna
your
be-
background
okay,
is.
I'll try and keep it brief.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm Helen. I am plural, just so that you know. I'm Platts, because otherwise you're going to drive me mad.
Thank you.
What you'll see though is when I send emails out, is they've put Platts Johnson on the end. That isn't my name. My name is Platts. Just so you know. At the moment, I came in working on the community centre project, and hey, Alison, and I'm doing all of the fundraising assistant stuff with that. I will wait for Alison stops moving furniture around. So I do all of our communications work, all of our graphic design work, events organising, fundraising stuff, all of that kind of stuff, because that's my sort of wheelhouse of stuff. Previous to that, I'm clearly not Canadian. I came over from Edinburgh, and in Edinburgh I used to, my background is project management in construction and regeneration, and so within that I used to do a lot of work in primarily economic development projects. So most of the projects that I used to run were across the city. Obviously Edinburgh is a big city and it's mostly made up of wee villages, and most of them were to do with helping very run-down areas try to boost their economy within the areas. Like I say, it's made up of wee villages, and so a lot of them were just going in and helping them just try and recover and boost the economy a little bit, and then tourism, because obviously Edinburgh is very reliant on tourism, kind of like we are. So that's what a lot of my projects were, and just finding out what people needed and trying and helping with that. But a lot of construction work, because obviously that's part and parcel of economic development. So that's very briefly what my background is. Prior to that, I actually, which these guys don't know because I can't fit it on my resume because it would be about 10 pages long, I actually was a highways inspector. So that's where I started out life. So that was for a completely different council. So I started working in councils when I was 15. We call them councils back home, not municipalities. So I started in admin, and then I started as a highways inspector, and I did that. And then I worked up to doing everything. So I've done quite a lot of different jobs.
So you know a bit about infrastructure.
I do a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
I know a lot about highways and transportation, yeah. And then I moved obviously into project management and construction and all kinds of things. So yeah, I've done a lot of different things.
Oh, terrific.
Can I just make a comment as part of the search process and committee? Impeccable education, highly relevant background, scored exceptionally well, and we're just delighted to have you.
Terrific. Well, maybe what we could do is just go around the table for Helen's benefit. You know, even if you may know us all or most of us, but name and sort of what your primary connection or interest in the economic development area of Bowen Island is. Sound like a good idea? Yeah. So maybe Wolfgang, could we start with you? Just name and kind of what your primary economic development interest is on the island.
We know because I had hoped she would work for us. We had to compete with the municipality. Obviously, we lost.
We're lucky then.
So, Helen knows me.
I do.
Okay, terrific.
I know I see it too.
Yeah, and Steph needs no introduction. So, and I'm Rod Marsh, and I'm chairing the committee, and I'm in the construction business and paint and drywall. But for the period of time, the last 15 or 16 years that I've been on Bowen, I seem to have always been involved in some sort of business organization or committee.
I'm Edward Watman, I'm the vice chair, and I was thinking about this the other way. I've been involved with this committee in one shape or another since we're pushing 5.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Day one?
Yeah. I'm a retired researcher. We had a market research company that used stories and storytelling.
I know, I stalked you.
So that's what we did, and we had some input into the branding efforts. And one of my interests is there's a whole level of depth underneath the logo and the characters that really speaks to I think the essence of the island. And my goal is to somehow get that out in a very subtle but powerful way.
Great.
Well, we met obviously, but you probably don't know my background. I've been on Bowen for 26 years, and brought my family up here, have my family here, aged. So so I'd like to see the ongoing resiliency and economic health of the community for multi-generations. My professional background is 30 years as a tech executive recruiter, hence my participation on the committee. I also run Hemp Creek Natural Building, which is a Bowen-based construction business, and would like very much to keep it here and see the Bowen be able to house and entertain light industrial as part of the complex matrix of industry we have here.
Well, we kind of know each other, but Maureen, and I'm here representing Tourism Bowen Island as the chair of that committee. So yes.
I'm Maureen. Council background is college communication prof and editor, and came to this country from one of those little villages that are part of Edinburgh.
Yes.
You know me, but
I
I'm
do.
Councillor Morris, and I've been on the Economic Development Committee way back in the beginning when it first started and its precursors. And I'm a CPA, FCPA by training and background.
Fawn Colbert. Hi. Welcome. I'm a real estate agent on the island, but I'm really interested in, again, creating this
Bowen as a resilient community and sustainable, resilient in many facets. So that's just why I'm here.
Kirsten Enemark.
It's nice to meet you.
Oh,
I know who you are.
oh, you do?
Yes, I do.
More
No,
stalking.
anyway,
More
stalking.
See, now I'm curious. So I work for Shaw.
I know.
I'm
I'm stuffed all over.
your social insurance number is. But so I've been with Shaw for just over 3 years, but I've been working in telecommunications for over 20. Really all over Canada. But I am a native British Columbian, and I've been on Bowen Island now for oh shoot, I think it's over 4 years, so close to 5 years. So yeah. And anyways, I've been so I'm new to the committee, and also looking at the digital roadmap, because I do think that's a really interesting space to be in terms of it, how it can shape to support our economy, our local economy, as well as those telecommuting, and then also encouraging certain businesses here on Island.
And I'm Robin Fenton. We sort of know each other. I'm an architect by training, and the lens I bring to this is like housing and also land use. And so I'm really interested in how both of those things can support community economic development, because they're both critical.
Yeah.
And facilitator extraordinary.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, that's true. And Wendy?
Oh, on the phone.
Oh, Wendy. Hi, Wendy. Sorry. Do you want to introduce yourself? Are you still with us?
Yes, hi,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, hi, hi there, I'm Wendy Coe, so I'm the Regional Manager for Economic Operations with the Ministry of Forest, Lands, Natural Resource Operations, and Rural Development. And so it's very exciting to have you aboard, and congratulations to Bowen Island for their successful application to the RDP program. So I think there are a lot of economic opportunities, and I think with the development of a CD plan and identifying some of the key perhaps areas that your community would like to work on, look forward to working with you and hopefully implementing some of the key initiatives from the plan.
Awesome. Thanks, Wendy.
You're welcome.
Terrific. Well, it's been pointed out that I think it was in the middle of May that the rural dividend funding announcement was done, and a month has elapsed. But I have to say, I'm really excited that in a month we've been able to find the right fit and the right person, and actually have a commitment and have you here at our meeting. So that's actually moving at lightning speed as far as I'm concerned. And so we're looking forward to the journey over the next 2 years.
Yeah, that'd be exciting.
Now, so do you want to say anything else as we launch in here? I mean,
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be. I think we've got a lot to do. I think that you guys are already doing some really awesome stuff, because obviously Steph and I already work together. We're in the same office, so she talks to me about a lot of the things that you guys are doing. No, it's awesome. I mean, she's a great person to work with, so we really get on. And I can see a lot of the things that you guys are doing already, and I honestly, and I'm not just saying that to be nice, like she knows I'm not the kind of person I would say if I was like, hang on a minute, what the heck are they doing? I think that you guys are doing some really great stuff, and I think that we can just build on what you guys are doing, and obviously like work together, because this is what we have to do, right? Because I can't possibly do everything by myself. I don't have enough time. I'm only one person. So, I think I'm really excited. I think we desperately need it. I mean, I said to Steph when I first started working here, I was shocked that we didn't actually have an economic development officer. Because I know Bowen is small, but given the type of island that we are and what we have going on, I was really surprised. I mean, I know a lot of it comes down to money because it's not like we're like, all the money, you know, but I'm surprised that we don't have one. So I'm really glad that we've had this opportunity to get somebody because we desperately need it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm just really stoked that we can do it.
Terrific.
So yeah, it's going to be great.
Good. Well, let us know what you think you need from us initially, and I think as far as our working groups go, you know, I think maybe we need to reach out to Helen and spend, you know, a
Yeah.
coffee time.
I think so.
or
I
an
think
update
that's
with
what
you.
I'd like to do. I think
Yeah.
because I know you've got a few different offshoots of the different groups. So I think it'd be nice to spend time with some of the different groups to see what you guys are doing. Steph and I had a bit of a chat about the different ones and what they do.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be good to get a feel for that. Then because I got to sit down and just figure out what on earth I'm doing as well, and work out a work plan. Then we can sort of go from there in terms of, you know, how things are going to work and what we all need and that kind of stuff. Right? I can't just go, here is what I need because I have no idea right now.
Right.
But that'll come pretty quickly, I think. Well, it'll have to. But yeah.
Super. Yeah, Maureen?
Just a point. The application that we submitted to the province did have a proposed work plan.
I saw.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the first 3 months or so, if I'm remembering correctly, really was given over to research and familiarizing with what is currently going on.
Yeah.
So you've got that breathing space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was relieved to see that.
Okay. Then again, welcome, and we'll move on. I don't think we have any public comments. Sorry, Steph.
I'm just going to ask if we can do action items before Emma. I should have done that at the agenda. We could still chat.
That's fine with me. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I don't see any public comments. So then let's have a look at action items, and then we'll move on to. So action items are page 40, sort of towards the back here. And public toilet is our first couple of action items.
Yes. My very important portfolio.
Mine too, Maureen, mine too.
So items 1 in both April 12th and May 10th are toilet related. So I spoke with Tom and they're not prepared to put additional signage in for the public toilet facilities, but they are prepared to put in a portable toilet next to Seaside Cottage, which is at the entrance just on the other side of Boulevard Cottage. They'll also make available to Tourism Bowen Island brochures that show all of the locations of the Metro Vancouver facilities throughout the park. And there was one more thing. Do you remember, Steph? What was the additional point that Tom made?
So is that something they have?
To work with.
They do.
Crippen Park has Metro Vancouver has a map of Crippen Park that indicates
Yeah.
locations.
Oh, I think
Who's working with?
I think the third thing was for Tourism
Mine.
Bowen Island to address the omissions in the tourism map.
There wasn't any omissions. That was the thing. I was a bit confused by that because as far as I knew, they were all indicated except for now we know that the new maps that have just come out do not indicate the facilities that are at the ball fields.
Ball
that's the
field
only
and the one on
just-
across from the school.
The
two
lineup.
missions.
And I think that's going to be a tricky one going forward because is that going to be a permanent thing?
Just
then?
for the summer.
So it's just for the summer. So I think that's why it's not on the map because it's not on
Needs
the
a little
PDF.
asterisk that says.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
Seasonal
So-
toilet.
Seasonal.
Yeah.
But
Anyways,
the
it's-
bottom
it's-
line is we've made. No,
I think
won't say that.
and if
We've
I
made progress.
I don't want to like step. Are you? Can I speak to this too? I think we're done and like we've done everything we can do. Can we move forward? Yes.
Yes.
And it does become a little bit. What happens is I hear from the tourism staff. So that's where and Steph and I had a little conversation about this the other day, and it's very, for some reason, it's very frustrating. So. I know. And it is. And so even though we know there's facilities right off the ferry, there's facilities on the ferry, it's the thing. Tourists forget. So anyways, I think we've done everything we can do.
And
And
the
thank you
irony-
for everyone for
Yes.
doing everything.
The irony is they're walking into the woods.
Yeah.
And we have to remember,
Let's not start that. Let's move on. Well,
but
yeah.
we're addressing business concerns too,
Yeah.
right? Like we've actively heard from
Yes.
business owners in Nicole. business
Exactly,
issues, so
that's,
it's-
and that's the, I think it's a trickle down, it's sort of, they talk to the staff at the tourist info cottage who don't hear it very kindly from
Right.
some people, and then that comes, to, so I think we've done everything we can do.
So that's terrific, and I think that's great. So do we need to, though, as a last step, go back to the business owners and make a communication about all of
I
this?
think that would
I
probably
think
be a
that would
good
probably be
idea.
a good idea.
I think Steph had flagged that as
It's not over, we're still in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think when Emma does her presentation about wayfinding.
Yes,
maybe we
I
can
actually-
have a more fulsome discussion
Yes,
about it.
that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. One thought I'd like to add to that, though, is just in terms of how we communicate to business owners, if we think ahead to what their ongoing complaints are, maybe we can turn some of that back to them now, in terms of the responsibility
Yeah,
to direct people,
totally, absolutely. Yeah.
and show that, position that
Yeah.
as, something that will benefit them if they take on that part of the communication.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to say one more thing quickly. As a tourist, and like a person who travels, you walk into a business and you say, do you have a washroom I can use? And they say, no, it's for customer use only. I don't get offended by that, myself personally, and that, but as long as they can direct me to somewhere where there is a facility. So I think that's what we need. We need to educate people now. Like, just say, well, if you're not wanting hordes of people in your establishment,
Send them somewhere.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
But tell them where to go.
Okay.
Oh, weird.
So is there an action item to continue on then? Not to continue
Well, no, I think
on
it's gonna come up more with Emma's, because I think the next step would be to talk to business owners about this, but that'll come up more with Emma's presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Would this be something we should flag for maybe next February or March and get a start on
Ahead
it
of it.
early
Well,
on?
and if we're, it's gotta be earlier than that, if we're
Okay.
gonna go forward with the idea of making sure that we do have all the locations, even temporary locations,
Okay.
on the info, on the tourism
When
brochure.
would
Like,
that have
like
been?
December, January, because that's when we start building up brochure.
Maybe we should actually make that an action item and have this discussion, so we have an
On an
integrated
ongoing, yeah,
plan.
sure.
Okay, so we move that we add it to our January meeting. Is January the right time?
December.
December meeting?
Yeah, December.
Put it as an action item.
Yeah,
It doesn't
just-
need a motion.
An action
No,
item,
yeah.
okay. Action item for December meeting, 2019.
So it's the action is to discuss inclusion of toilet facility locations in the tourism.
Including
Strategy?
temporary locations,
Yeah,
including
temporary.
seasonal temporary locations, because that's, I think, where some of the communication broke down as far as getting it on this year's.
Okay.
Okay, number 3, link the summit summary to the CBC webpage and share with participants. Done.
And nicely done, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just, so late. Next year. Yeah, so number 4, send an email with a survey. The email is sitting in my draft with the survey sitting in my draft. I've just got one thing I want to discuss with the committee before it's sent out, and we can do that during the business engagement section of the meeting, if that's okay. Share summit notes with the Emergency Program Executive Committee. Done.
Done.
Councilor Morris, thank
Yeah.
you. Wendy, you had questions about when to approach Colleen McCormick after council approval, so that's still pending. Yeah, we're clear on that, pending still?
Yeah.
Digital Roadmap Working Group, meet and begin creation of action plan. We have that here, or haven't met yet, but we can discuss this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did meet on May 14th,
Okay,
and one of our action items, of course, was doing an inventory of connectivity,
okay.
which, just in time, a summary was sent
Excellent.
out.
So So these are your notes from the meeting, I guess then, just to be a little, we're supposed to get notes from the committee meetings, I just was reviewing all the terms of reference. And
Do you know-
just even scrappy little notes, just anything I can
Do you know,
satisfy.
I did take notes and I did not put them in an email, but I can circle back with you and provide
It's
those
fine,
to you.
moving forward, so
Yeah.
friendly reminder. Okay. When you're not here, you get voluntold, request that Councillor Nicholson has sent reports. We did that.
Yeah.
Communicate with the Ready Potato regarding posting signage, so I did, and then moved on from them to the village square in general, and that's part of what prompted Emma coming.
Cool.
Great.
Transportation planner, Tim could not make it. There's an appointment with his wife in town this morning. Emma can make it. Tim is gonna try to find me the video, Councillor Kale recommended the video of when you're entering Bowen, what you see for signage. He didn't seem to think it was super relevant anymore because it's so old, but said he'd try to find it for me anyways and hasn't been able to.
When was it?
Oh, it was
2003?
when we first started. No, I think it was later than that, because it was, but I can't, it was when Tim was president of the chamber, I think, and Darcy and they did a video of what you see as a tourist when you come off the ferry.
So before the building was the new building?
But yeah, Ronnie's building
Yeah.
will be in there, and so it may be outdated and not all that relevant.
So we won't, I'll just tick this off. It appears
And I
that
think
there's
the
no
log block wall
accessibility.
still maybe had old stuff on it and everything else at that
All the
point.
kids stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good job.
Great. Perfect timing.
Perfect time. Bring your chair.
Yeah, come join us.
I've been asked kind of last minute to present some wayfinding.
Very last minute. I said next month is fine, or
Thank you for coming though.
today, so
It's
that's
great.
nice.
I was just going to present what we came up with for the multi-use path. It's based on some regional wayfinding principles, best practices, and could be easily transferred to other wayfinding needs. I hope everyone's had a chance to kind of go through this document.
So Wendy, this is, it's included in the package, item, the delegation, if you want to look on your screen.
Okay, sounds good, thanks.
And I'm just going to briefly go through the content, not necessarily page by page, but an introduction to wayfinding in general and why it's so important. I'm sure
It's not perfect with the PDF.
it's easier. Thank you. I'm sure you all have a pretty good understanding of why wayfinding is important, and that's why you've asked me to come here. In terms of transportation needs, which is why this came up for me, doing the transportation plan for Bowen Island, it was really important that people were able to orient themselves and navigate around the different networks we have to get to where they want to go. But more importantly, it's how people experience a place. It's huge in sense of place, how comfortable someone feels, how excited they are to explore their environment. And wayfinding doesn't come by naturally. It needs to be very thoughtful, and there are various ways to do it. We are going off of the Metro Vancouver Regional Wayfinding Guidelines. As part of their regional cycling strategy, they've created this separate document to help municipalities create effective wayfinding systems. And I'm not going to go through all the principles, there's 7 of them, I'm not going to go through them in detail, but essentially it's to have something that's simple, easy to understand, consistent, and gives people a lot of time to react, so common sense, I would say. But based on these principles, we've put together a wayfinding strategy for the multi-use path. This is a huge part of the transportation plan, creating new infrastructure for active transportation, pedestrians, cyclists, and these are routes, these are networks that haven't been here before, so it's really important to have a good wayfinding system in place for people to use them well.
safely. The key elements of a wayfinding system, signs, and there's lots of different types of signs. There are those that help you make decisions, especially if there is a fork in the road or if there is a sudden turn, unexpected turn, stuff like that. They need to be signed very carefully. There's also confirmation signs to tell you how far a destination is, giving people an idea of how much further they have to go and a level of comfort that they're on the right path.
And this is for like multi-speeds, right? It's car users, people walking, people on bikes, like that's taken, am I jumping ahead?
No, that's a very
Okay.
good question. This, as I mentioned, it was from the regional cycling strategy. So a lot of these guidelines are based on a cyclist. But that being said, a lot of the general wayfinding principles are applicable to cars and pedestrians. What you're looking at that's different for those different modes are the distance of signing from a turning point and size and clarity of your font. What we've chosen here is legible for both pedestrians and cyclists because it's a multi-use path.
So how big are these signs going to be?
I don't have that right here, but at the end of this document, they have the sign specifications. And it will tell you
Oh yeah, it's
the
quite
size
particular.
of the different
Oh, yeah.
signs.
Yeah.
I don't know why they put it all in millimeters, but this looks like it's
It's about 2 feet wide by 3 feet tall-ish.
it's almost 600 millimeters.
Yeah, 2 feet.
It's 100 units per sign.
Yeah.
But anyways, just getting back to wrapping up what a wayfinding system should have, signage, also pavement markings are really important. In this case, pavement markings, so it's pavement. Sometimes it could be different color paving stones or different ground treatments, surface treatments. Also landscaping could be unique and identifiable for wayfinding, as well as street furniture. We don't have a lot of that on Bowen, so we don't get into that in this plan. But in other places, it could be lamp posts, garbage receptacles, bollards, etc. can all help identify a wayfinding system. And then we come to the planning part of wayfinding, which I'll go back to here. Yeah, consistency. So we want to specify our fonts and sizes, and so they're easily recognizable across the system. When you do planning, the first thing you have to do is identify your key destinations in your area and how far away they need to be signed. So that's based on how important that destination is. According to the regional guidelines we're using, they have 4 levels of importance. The most important ones will need to be signed up to 8 kilometers away, and then the more local destinations up to 3 kilometers away.
So in our case, would that be more where the intersections are, because there's very few major intersections on the Cross Island?
Well, for the decision signs, they'll be at intersections, but confirmation signs are more at certain intervals. They don't necessarily have to be at intersections. So the second step would then to be identify where your route is. In this case, it's the multi-use path, so it's already identified as this strategy. But this could easily be for a route for a trail, different trailheads, trail systems, parks, beach access, and any other tourism routes. I don't know if there's any key tourist routes that people use. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but
yeah.
I mean, a lot of it is Crippen, which is already
Signed.
signed by the Metro, so,
Yeah.
you know,
Or
but definitely
maybe-
going forward with this.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
maybe Tourism Bowen would like to create a new tourism route that like hits up all the nice shops.
What would be helpful, I think, would be flagging visitor parking. Because
Yeah,
you get
yeah.
off the ferry and people do not know where to go. And often will grab the first space available, which may not be the best option.
Yeah, so for this particular document, the key destinations were much larger in area, but for something like a tourism route, it could be very specific, like parking or like bathrooms or, yeah, and you can make a list of all the things that need to be signed.
Well, even
Cool.
routes to get you from the Crippen Park area up to Artisan
To-
Square.
yeah, and that's-
back to
I
the
mean,
Village
that-
Square and stuff without
And that
having
has
to go back
definitely
to
been an
the Crippen
ongoing,
Park.
like the merchants and artisans that have often, there's there's often been some
So there is-
conversations surrounding directing people there. They get to Village Square and they think they're in Artisan Square, so, yeah.
Yeah, so the first thing is identifying the route, exactly where are the people supposed to travel, and then deciding what they need to know they're traveling to, so
Yeah.
what needs to get on the sign. And then the next thing is deciding where those signs need to be placed. In this case, again, we're talking about cycling and walking, and it's talking about the decision points, how far away from turns they need to have a sign. This will be similar for walking paths to tourist destinations. So there's standards already established, and you follow those standards, and you create signage plans for each of your routes. It's hard to see here, but essentially the multi-use path is shown in pink, and then the various different sign types have different icons, and they show you physically on the ground where they should be installed. And then the appendix, as we had already seen, show the actual specifications for the various types of signs.
What's an off-network waymarker?
So these are not on the actual route, but they're to help direct people to the route. And there's no real set right or wrong way to place those, because it's more of where you know people are coming from and might need a little guidance to get to the route.
Or where they, you know, they might take a wrong turn.
To get to the route,
Yeah, and
where
get
it's
them back on
confusing.
track.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's not actually on the route. Yeah.
Not like your Garmin or something that says 200 feet make an illegal U-turn.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I know I find it helpful when we're driving, if I've been lost and there's a sign that says back to the highway one this way, or
Exactly.
I-5 this way, you're like, oh, good, that's where I need to go.
Back.
Yeah.
On track. Yeah. Exactly. So I hope this gives you, you know, a good beginning starting point in terms of what wayfinding is and how it could be applicable for other systems. This one's for the multi-use path, but could be easily applied to other systems. And I would encourage, if you are considering other wayfinding systems, to build on this so that visitors see a unified system visually across the island.
So,
Unified, how does that fit with parks and signage we've got in the existing municipal parks?
I've talked to Carla about this. There's no actual sign standard right now. So that's definitely something she would like to work on as well. Right now, they don't follow this, but they've also just been made kind of on a needed basis, not following the
I
standard.
think it's in the parks plan to get one.
There also was discussion last night at the Heritage Commission meeting about potential plaques or signage related to heritage sites and uncertainty about how all that might mesh. So that might be something to come up as part of the heritage strategic plan in the future.
yeah, go ahead.
Is this a step-by-step implementation, or when does the implementation of this plan go into effect?
This one,
Yes,
as we build the multi-use path.
okay.
Yeah,
So-
we had a little section in front of BIC's, in front of the school, that was put in by BC Hydro, a little ahead of schedule, so it doesn't have any of the signage yet.
Okay,
We actually just got this finished by Rethink a month ago.
okay.
So I'm actually tasked with ordering some signage and getting it installed this summer.
Allison?
So I'm going back to, I don't understand this element fee page.
Which page are you on?
Page 20 out of 44. So where do they go? Or what are they for?
They're for crossings, intersection crossings where there's vehicles. Normally the crosswalk is just the two white lines, that's for pedestrian, but to indicate that cyclists might also be crossing, because it's a different speed. The elephant feet are the standard now.
Okay. And the other question that came up at the Caring Circle annual meeting was the accessibility. So how do you mark a crosswalk so that people that are blind know the crosswalk is there?
Oh, there's different treatments. I don't think it's in our budget, different surface treatments.
Yeah, so that's on the major, okay, so that was that So there is standards, but we don't put them in.
Yeah, it's more so at the crossing, so I know with the Cardina Road Improvement Project, the curb letdown, that's usually the main indicator for someone that's visually impaired. If you have a proper letdown, that's how they know that's where the crosswalk is. But in terms of the surface treatments, they get very costly.
Yeah.
You can have different textured treatments for crosswalks.
Yeah, I've seen, well, they've got them, translate, we had a tour, and we were showing the different lines, and so they can tell where the door's gonna be on the SkyTrain and everything else, but.
We will have, those are tactile walking
Yeah.
surface strip indicators, and we will have one for the bus loading area when we
Okay.
put in the sidewalk on Cardina.
So that was good. That was one of those.
So Emma, is there?
One more one.
Okay.
How do, this multi-use path is only on one side of the road, but it's intended to be used by people going both directions.
Yes.
So how do you sign that so that it's obvious that,
A bike might be coming straight for you. Yeah.
well, no, just so that they know that they can go on both sides. I mean, having followed a cyclist down the road with a perfectly nice path on the other side that they didn't use.
You can have directional arrows on the sidewalk.
The path.
Yeah, normally you don't, because sidewalks are usually bi-directional. But if it were an issue and people felt that they couldn't go in both ways, we could definitely put an arrow on the pavement.
How does that get handled? Do you know how it gets handled on, say, the seawall? Because the seawall has the same issue. It's got one path.
We've got lots of stuff.
There is
Yeah.
it happens on the path.
Yeah.
So they've got
They
a
do.
line, and then they've got like cyclists
Yeah.
and arrows and all
They
that kind of
have
stuff.
a couple
Okay,
different
I think we
sections.
shouldn't discuss this here, because it isn't really.
No, but it's an issue where.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
important that you noted it for
That-
Emma.
And
but-
we need
Yeah,
to know that, people
uh,
need to know they're supposed to be on that path.
Definitely,
not
and that's
on
why I'm
the road.
saying if it becomes an issue, we can mark it, but I will bring this up, the seawall in Stanley Park has magnitudes greater volumes
Oh, yeah.
and speeds than we're going to experience in Cardina. It's also much wider, and it has grade separation, has lots of other elements in place for
No,
safety.
I was more concerned that I've been frequently lately where there's been bike paths.
Where people don't use them.
And they don't, if they're going that way and the path's on the other side of the road, they're on the road here, they're not over there on the bike path.
Sometimes that's not an indication of not knowing, sometimes it's an indication of not caring.
Well, I know, so that's the.
I don't think
yeah.
you're gonna
Yeah.
rope everyone in.
So one thing that I think we could cover is, so if there are other, so you've mentioned parks, heritage, tourism, the multi-use path, of course, highways, as all being sort of area, like groups or interest areas that would have signage or wayfinding. And of course, businesses, like the golf course, for instance, being one that I've noticed, have little signs that they've just put up. And of course, other ones in the cove. So I guess from our committee perspective, if there is a business entity on the island, is there somewhere in the municipality, are you the contact that if they want to either get permission or unify their wayfinding with the strategy? Like, is there a municipal resource for businesses?
Short answer, I would say no. Maybe Helen in the future. But also, secondly, our land use bylaw does not allow business to advertise in a municipal right-of-way, so we're...
These are directional, like think of, there's Destination BC has standard blue and white signs.
Like the
Artisans
signs.
and golf courses and
Yeah.
a few other wineries and
Yep,
all that sort
definitely.
of stuff, so.
You need to go through an application process to qualify for that signage. So we could set up a process like that here, but right now, in fairness and consistency, we've never let a business advertise in the right of way. On private property, if you have an agreement with another property owner and you wanted to advertise not on your site, you can do that, if they follow the signage regulations. So they're limited to the amount of signs they can have.
So a directional sign is considered advertising, is that what you're saying?
No, if it's for a
For a
business.
business, yeah.
It is.
But if it's a directional sign that just says artisan, then that's not advertising.
No, if it's for a location, a destination,
Yeah.
like Tunstall Beach, Artisan Square, that's fine, but your question was for a business.
Mhm. Well, I'm calling it a business, but I'm sort of thinking Artisan Square is a business, or is a collection of businesses, right?
Yeah, well, we would identify it as a key destination.
Yeah, the
Okay.
square itself. is-
But we do get requests from businesses,
Mhm.
and yeah, to be fair and consistent, we have never allowed a business.
I see, okay.
I guess there's a fine line where a business becomes a destination too. When if it's a big enough business, the golf course is, you know, a
That's
destination.
true.
So
That's true. The golf course is in this
Yeah, so it's
signage
also a
plan.
Yeah, you know, and in fairness, I think the Ready Kitchen Cafe, for instance, or Alderwood Farm, you know, they're both, you know, they have their own signage on the road, but they're both of interest to visitors to the island and might be hard to find otherwise.
But if they're in the map, if they can have.
Yeah, there are other options. I'm just
Maps,
trying to
yeah.
understand
Yeah.
what any business or location might do if there is anything for them to do.
Just
Yeah.
the other factor, which I'm sure Emma is well aware of, is just the concern about proliferation of signage on this
Yeah.
island. It annoys people when they're
Yeah.
doing signs.
Yeah.
There was a presentation done to council a number of years ago on the proliferation of signs
Yeah.
and how we should be getting rid of them.
Yeah,
Too many people don't read them.
It's true.
right.
Were we gonna bring up toilets, or are we done with that? Or we're
I
not
would like to
talking
bring up
about it anymore?
toilets.
Yeah,
For sure,
we're
we're
gonna
gonna
try
do
and get this.
Yeah.
I'll just let you guys do it, because
Thank you, Robin.
No, go ahead.
Oh,
I
well, one of the issues we've been struggling with is public toilet facilities in general for tourists and businesses. We got feedback from them that it was an issue and all that stuff. So we've kind of made headway, and we have a couple of summer only, shall we call it, seasonal toilets going in. And we talked about signage to the ones at the ballpark and stuff. So I think we discussed it earlier. We said, let's talk with them about it. Like, what do we do? Like, does the municipality have any capacity? Do we make temporary signs? Do we, like, was there talk at Metro, like, could we make a little flyer that businesses can give to people? Like, how do we help tourists?
The map of the toilets on the
toilets.
island.
How do we, as a municipality,
Rethink that.
support businesses and support tourists in finding public facilities?
And identifying them when they're walking, so they know.
Yeah.
I think specifically for the temporary ones that are being put in by the municipality, or at least the one that is, because Metro does, like I said, they've got their own Metro Vancouver Park, Crippen Park has their own flyer that, as Maureen said, Tom's gonna provide to tourism. We already have it, we give it to people. Circle the bathrooms, you know, like here it is. So Metro's well marked with their bathrooms. I think it's just the municipalities, like temporary, because there's a,
Well, there's only one.
there's only one.
There's one temporary one on the hill, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And then Metro is putting in a temporary one now at
At
Gardena Road.
Seaside, yeah.
I didn't
So-
think it was just the temporary ones. I think everything, if a tourist is new to the island, everything's temporary to them.
Fair enough, yeah.
They just want
They don't care, they just want to know where they can go to the bathroom.
I mean,
So-
I think what we're
How do we
thinking
get
of,
there
yeah.
without bugging
how do
Helen?
we get a sign on the road so people know that this is where to go?
Yeah, like for
Like
example,
when they're
I've been,
walking around, there's
yeah,
I think we should let them speak.
Sorry.
No, I'm like,
But they're temporary, so you're not looking for permanent signage.
yes.
But the sign can be unscrewed in the wintertime
yeah,
and taken down,
yeah.
so it needs to be on a post.
It's just a challenge that we're facing. Like I know lots of, like I've been to Blaine, I think, and like little American towns, and they just have a big sign that says public toilets, 200 meters or yards or whatever it is. Like it's really obvious.
Yeah.
I don't think we have anything like that
No, we
at all,
don't, and we
right?
don't even, there isn't even one indicating that little room, or the washrooms off the ferry, BC Ferry's washrooms are actually, like, people, it just looks like a white building
Yeah,
to
it's
them.
not
So,
Yeah, it's not
like,
well
we
signed.
I'm one of those people who doesn't like all the signage, because it gets a little overwhelming to read it, but it was like something there saying, washroom, here, like, literally, so.
And you're right,
I'm
maybe
not-
it is just something that goes up in the summer, has some
Yeah.
information, and it comes down in the winter, so we don't have
You
to
said a
have it.
sandwich board.
Yeah, well, I know that they
Yeah.
have them outside of the tourist center already. I mean, in front of the library or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're hard to see if you're in a car. Or what? I mean, I think Destination BC again has those blue signs. I think I've seen signs around that point to washrooms on roads and other places.
Yeah.
I mean, even though the Crippen Parks are on their map, somebody walking off the ferry doesn't have the Crippen Park map.
And you can't read it on the map. There's a lot on that map.
And so that when you're walking into Davy's Orchard Cottage, there should be a sign there that says washrooms, because there are washrooms in there.
Metro is not prepared to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Oh, we
not,
can put it
that's,
up on our road.
You could do that.
yeah, that's, I think what we're looking at
Yeah,
here
I'm
is
talking
just
like
like
how
what Robin
we-
says,
yeah.
a general sign right at the beginning.
Yeah, and I
Right
mean,
at the
I don't know
beginning.
how much work or effort would be, and I know you guys kind of laughed at it, but honestly, like a little handout, a black and white
No,
handout.
I laugh because it's
Yeah, that-
smart.
for this summer, we could
It's-
probably do that, a little map that just showed, you know, I don't know.
There's my Sunday project taken care of, I'll
Or
do
a
that.
couple
on
Okay,
Sunday.
well, okay, do you have a
I'm
comment?
a fairly new member on this committee, so I don't
Yeah.
want to criticize. However, I expected this to be an economic development committee, and going by the time we have spent on the question of public toilets, I'm wondering how important,
It's big
It's
names
very
to the-
important.
it is
Yeah,
very
it is.
important for the
Can't
people who
even-
need it.
And
But
the
maybe we
businesses
should
and
have a
businesses.
subcommittee, if it's
No.
really,
No,
well,
no, sorry, it's, there's a
It is
precedent,
very
there's a
important.
history here.
is it important for this committee? That's my
we're done
question.
with it
Maybe
now.
for tourism and basic parks, but economic development?
When we have regular meetings with different sectors of the community, and honestly, the amount of time that was spent on this topic when we met with that sector, particularly the retail owners,
The
they're
storefront
fed up
businesses.
being asked about this, and it was a specific request to this committee to do what we could to sort it out.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think we've kind of done this to death.
I agree,
Yeah.
but-
If Maureen is gonna put together a little flyer
No,
on
but
on
I will
Sunday
talk,
afternoon.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll figure
We can
something
take this
out.
offline.
Yeah.
And we've
Yeah.
introduced some changes already.
Yeah.
Why don't we see what
Absolutely.
impact they
Which is
have before
great.
we go to the next step
Let's
of
go,
putting in
yeah,
muni
thank you.
signage.
Yeah. Okay,
I agree with you.
so Emma, you've heard loud and clear in tourism going this.
No one gave her a chance to talk.
No, but
I
please,
did.
no, but
We
please
haven't
tell
heard
us.
her
yeah.
ideas about it.
Oh, well, I think what I was looking for is like consensus around the table to put forward a recommendation to council to direct staff to look into this further, but it sounds like there's a map and some other things that might be going on, honestly.
No, that was just me speaking off the cuff,
A map
sorry,
isn't
that's
gonna
Robin
solve
put that idea,
If
yeah,
you
and
don't
it's not.
have a map.
Well,
Okay,
I
so,
think we
so
really
let's
need
talk about a
signs.
resolution then, for us
I
to.
think we need to have a couple of signs on the road pointing people on the side to where the washroom locations are.
Yeah,
Okay, so Maureen or Allison, do you want to make a motion that we request council
I will,
places a sign?
Yeah.
Can we request staff
yeah,
to
Yeah.
look into some simple signage,
very simple.
Direct
very
people
simple
to
signage
washroom.
to direct people to public washroom
Yeah.
facilities?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
thank
that what
you.
has to happen, goes to council to direct staff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sorry, but, yeah,
It'll be
Stay,
by
are you
October.
clear about that stuff?
yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So Maureen is seconded,
I'll second it.
okay, and in favor? Okay, looks like we're all in favor.
Sorry.
Staff might come back for more information then, but I
Great.
think I have a lot now.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you. Excellent report.
Yes, it's awesome.
Good work.
Okay, so I'm not doing a good job of moving this along quickly, but that was a
Actually,
good
not that
resolution, I think. So business engagement working group is next. And
I'm not
notes
on
from
the
the
working group,
tech.
but I can.
Do we have notes?
I don't think we did know, so the last meeting was just Vaughn and I, couple people.
No, it was for the lunch and learn.
Sorry?
It says no.
Oh, wait, this is
No,
on the luncheon, but yes, Yvonne and
Yeah,
Robin
so
were
we
the only
have
people
met
who met
since
to follow
then,
this, yeah.
and there was notes from, we had the tech and telecommuter lunch, which went really well. I think it worked really well at that room, the facility at the Cove Commons.
Facilitated excellently.
Oh, thank you.
Really good.
And it got good coverage in the newspaper.
And it got coverage in the newspaper, not great, not a flattering photo of me. I was like, where am I? Oh, it's that side of my face. Okay. Anyways, it was great to see the pictures and the write-up in the paper was awesome. Yeah, I think it was received well. It was a dynamic, interesting group of people who hadn't otherwise connected. They were keen, and this was something I wanted to bring up, they were keen to kind of keep it going, so I don't know, and I know we as a committee and municipality can't keep necessarily doing that, but I wonder if there's, and maybe at subcommittee level, if we could at least just help facilitate getting it off the ground. Like, could we use the same list to invite them to another one in a month, and then say, hey, do you guys want to start a Google group or a Facebook group or a Slack group or whatever you want to do, and just start a monthly thing or whatever? Because I think they were keen to keep going.
Yeah, it seems like there's two different paths. There's the ones that want to get together with a physical space, that are lonesome working alone, and they want to bond and have that human interaction. And then there's another group which is more digitally oriented, and maybe a Facebook group would be good. I think probably monthly is too often, might be quarterly, but for the physical getting together, but there was also a third level appetite for that. I personally
We
thought
were just
that-
trying to figure out what our role in it is.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
what
but definitely to put out some kind of communication to the group with the, this is what we heard, and I don't know, people that want to do this, contact us, people that want to do that, there has to be a closure.
Yeah, which I think we usually do, so there'll be notes if they've
That's
already gone
That's-
out,
it's
right?
gone
So
out,
they've already
yeah.
gone out. So I felt like maybe the only thing that we could do to follow up is using that email list of contact people would be to, and I think we'd maybe have to find a little champion, like one person I spoke to was kind of keen to keep it going, and even just me, from not wearing my committee hat, wearing my, solopreneur, hat. It would be neat to do it monthly, and it would be it's more of just a casual meetup, not a structured, facilitated agenda type meeting, more of a, hey, let's meet on the last Friday of the month for lunch, come and just chat about, being a sole proprietor, being a telecommuter, being or whatever. So it was just kind of, so I mean, if everyone's okay with that, and we can do it at the subcommittee level, see if we can find a champion to who then we can pass the torch to and say, hey, start a Google group, Facebook group, whatever it is, just to open that opportunity to keep the connection going, but with us stepping back, maybe we just give a guide.
Disconnect, go on.
Yeah, I thought they said that there was a Facebook group that they had.
There was a Facebook group started about a co-working space,
Right.
which I started, and there's a few people on it. It's not terribly active, but it was just, so that does exist. So we could, maybe it's in that same thing, an email, an invitation, just, hey, if you want to join that for conversation.
When did you do that?
A few months ago.
Oh, okay, because
Yeah.
I don't think that was in the notes, and that would be interesting to a lot of people that were there.
That would not have been the notes.
Yeah.
No, and it's not that I just started because I was talking to a bunch of people who said, hey, we're all really interested in this. I'm like, okay, well, let's start this group and
I see.
have a place to talk about things and put ideas and everything. So again, I'm not wanting to be the lead, and I just wanted to create the space for it because I was hearing from people.
There also was going to be follow-up on the part of the library.
That took place as well.
That did take place? So that's great. That was another outreach to that particular sector.
So what was that? What was the outreach to the library?
The library, when we asked to use the space in odd hours, said no. And then when I went to Tina, because I don't like no, she got excited about how she could maximize this opportunity to, they were
Engage
planning
the
some
community.
consultation about
So
the use of that room.
maybe, Ed, why don't we do, our subcommittee, why don't we do that and actually maybe meet with Tina at our next
idea.
subcommittee meeting and say, hey, how can we work together? Because I think they like the space,
Yeah.
it is a de facto co-working space, so maybe we work with them and they take the lead
Yeah.
in hosting it. That's a
I think
great
it's
idea.
June 18th is that consultation.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's
if
right,
you
with the
wanna
library board.
Participate in that.
That's right, that's a good thing for us to remember.
The co-commons/library annex are doing consultation about how the space is working for people and have invited many people, June 18th.
Yeah. And there was a little post in the Facebook group yesterday about asking about the hours of the open workspace in the annex, which I thought was great. And I mean, that speaks to staff's efforts in getting that space, because there were a lot of people there who were not at all familiar with the space and the potential for working during the day or in the evenings.
So do you guys want to flag it on Facebook then?
Flag.
That consultation event? If you're gonna attend, or you're interested in getting people there, you can give it
Sure.
whatever you do on Facebook. Post
Yeah,
the
I can
link
do
and-
that. If I can find there must be something on the website, the library's website?
Where was it, what morning that you saw it? On which?
This was just a person
Oh, okay.
posting saying, what are the
Oh,
hours?
just not
Yeah.
anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I can take that as an add. I'll just do that.
Thank
I'll
you.
do a post on Facebook to say, hey, join in on this.
Well, thanks, Robin and Vaughn, for meeting and following up for the business engagement group. Steph, so when we collect names and emails of people who attend, what do we do with those?
They live in my folder. I did ask at this session if people would like me to, because they were talking about co-working, so I was, instead of having a BCC, I was gonna do the response and just in the 2-line, and I saw 2 faces freeze up, and I retracted that right away.
Right.
So obviously people were not wanting that.
Okay.
So,
My thought is that, for instance, who we invite to our business summit. You know, are these people going to be invited to business summit vis-a-vis the fact that they came out for a working?
yeah, so in the past, I've just trolled everything and created lists. I've got a master list and then lists by industry. With the implementation of the business licensing program, this is the transitional year, so it's a smaller list, but it feels like we should give whatever priority we can to the people who are compliant. I'm not sure next year how we're going to approach that.
Okay, I think it's important that however that list is kept, that people who have participated in these, that we keep back in touch with them, even if it's just,
Sorry, that's the question.
Yeah.
They are all there and being constantly harassed by me.
Wonderful.
Rest assured.
Yeah. Okay, so anything else to add with business engagement working group right now?
I don't think so. We have plans for stuff to happen in the fall,
Yes.
so maybe we'll meet this month and talk about this bit that we just talked about, and then I think we'll plan to meet like end of August, beginning of September to plan for the fall engagement sessions.
Terrific. Digital roadmap.
So while you're getting yourself set up, or would any of the people that were at that tech summit be useful to help in the digital roadmap process? Sure. Tech meeting?
Yeah, and Kirsten was there as well,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's we can always reach out to them.
Yeah, because certainly what we heard during that lunch too was connectivity was important. We certainly heard that, and that connectivity made a difference to a lot of the businesses that were there. And then certainly there were quite a few people who were for community. The greater Elizabeth. So we did have a kickoff meeting on May 14th. Steph, I can't believe how efficient you are.
Oh my.
Honestly.
Look what you made. It's beautiful.
And sort of one of our, so it was a kickoff meeting between Ed Vaughn and Natasha and myself, just to sort of broadly speak about digital strategy. And this was actually before the lunch session, so I found it's funny, I almost wish we had that kickoff meeting after the lunch session because I thought it was really quite rich. But one of our most basic takeaways, and it was something that I just sort of took on myself, is just doing an inventory of connectivity on the island. And you know, if and certainly when we look at the connectivity handbook that the province, I think I had shared a copy of that at our last meeting, sort of in during that digital strategy, one of the first steps is just doing an inventory of connectivity, because then that itself sort of lends to then, you know, the question with the digital strategy is what problems are you trying to solve using connectivity, using technology and digital resources, then you sort of have to first of all start to see what your inventory looks like. So long story short, it's funny, I think for Bowen Island, we have actually very robust connectivity, certainly from a wireline. Wireless, still, it's very good, especially when you compare it to other island communities. And it's still actually quite good even when you compare it to West Vancouver and North Vancouver, that the topography and sort of the makeup of the land use is very challenging sometimes to add infrastructure that supports a wireless network. So I think overall you could say that Bowen Island's connectivity is very close to the North Shore. You would have better, I would say, wireless connectivity in Vancouver and Burnaby and Coquitlam, again, less mountainous, and also you have high rises, quite frankly. So, but anyways, it's just to say that all in all for Bowen Island, we have good connectivity. In terms of wireline connectivity, when you have competition, that's really great. And certainly in the Cove, we've got great competition. You've got two strong companies, of course, providing service in the Cove. And then more island-wide, again, maximum internet 600 from Shaw. So again, that's very strong for those who are telecommuting and working at home, or even would want to have a small business away from Snub Cove, that would be possible.
And everybody can get that 600? There's no limitations with old wiring or anything like that?
No, everything is good except for there's still some areas that are under development, so there's new houses popping up, but as those houses get built, then the cable plant would then extend. Yeah. On the wireless front, I included a map that actually shows where this infrastructure is, and what we can see is that TELUS has small cells. These are antennas that are using the distribution poles to provide service. And just for those of you who may not be aware, TELUS and Bell share the same network. So if you're a Bell customer, you're essentially like Bell or TELUS, your service looks the same. You're using really the same infrastructure. Rogers has a separate network, of course. There is another network, Freedom Mobile, but it doesn't have a presence here on island. So right now you don't have Freedom Mobile service, but you do have Rogers and you do have Bell and TELUS. Although from a competition point of view, well, no, it's all good. So what we do see is that, TELUS service is quite strong. Parts of the island is also being serviced from other areas outside of Bowen Island. So on, for example, the west side of the island, wireless service, you would actually, if you were on TELUS or Bell or Rogers, you're most likely getting it then maybe from Gibson's, or you may be getting it from the Sunshine Coast. And same thing with the east side of the island, say with Charlotte Heights, you're then getting it from West Van, it's going across the water. So, one thing we should be aware of is that whenever the network gets busy, that then creates undependable network. In other words, if things get busy, say on the North Shore, that then affects our service here on island. Where there would be, where it's obvious that maybe there's parts of the island that don't have great wireless service, and again, I would just say in general, because we are mountainous, because we have trees, we're never going to have the same level of service, quite frankly, as say downtown Vancouver, unless we do want to fully scatter the island with antennas. But certainly the North Island seems to be a weak place for wireless service, so where Snub Cove seems to be quite robust, with Rogers, it's not as robust as it is with TELUS. And I would say North Island, both TELUS and Rogers is relatively weak. Yeah. So, one of the recommendations that I have made here is that if we did really want to, and there's lots of reasons why you would want to focus on wireless service, not just from a business or an economic point of view, but for emergency services, as well as just sort of, it's, the CRTC has deemed connectivity in general to be an essential service. And as more and more people really use their wireless devices, we have to think of what wireless service looks like outside of the home, even though there's lots of options inside the home. If your phone doesn't have great connectivity inside your home, you could use Wi-Fi calling, or you could enhance your Wi-Fi, in which both TELUS and Shaw have those sorts of services as well. They have sort of pods you can put into your house to enhance the Wi-Fi service. But if we did want to look at sort of overall improving service on the island, we could reach out to the wireless carriers and invite them in to just investigate to see what plans do they have to improve wireless service over the next 3 years. It's something Bowen Island did about 6 years ago. The mayor did reach out to the telecommunication carriers and said, our service isn't great, will you come and look at it? Again, if we did want to do that too, I think we also have to recognize that there's some inherent challenges with wireless carriers building infrastructure here. So there's some things that we could do to make it easier, or at least more inviting. For example, anywhere where there is land owned by the municipality, or where there's existing infrastructure operated by the municipality, we could ask the carriers to look at that land first for telecommunications infrastructure. I'm suggesting this for two reasons. One is you are then consolidating utilities with utilities, or municipal infrastructure with another kind of infrastructure. So from a land use point of view, it seems to be a little bit more reasonable. But also, if you do have the carriers locate their equipment on municipal land, it's a revenue opportunity for the municipality. And so for telecommunication tower operators that are then paying, X number of $1,000s a year, if you were to have those telecommunications infrastructure there, it's an ongoing revenue. And also the municipality would have more influence and control over the design of it and the location of it, and also encourage co-location. So that could be an action item then from that point of view, is to focus on the wireless and to invite the carriers to come in. And even in that letter say that we are open to, considering infrastructure on municipal lands, and that we are encouraging infrastructure that integrates as well as it can be with the environment, and to at least see what ideas and what timelines the carriers have, just in terms of that information gathering.
Wow, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, is that okay?
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not cutting you off, am I?
No.
No, okay. I
No.
thought that was one thing that really stands out for me is your comment about the fact that in terms of rural Gulf Islands or rural islands, we're pretty much at the top in terms of both wireless and internet connectivity. And we heard at the luncheon, the tech luncheon, that the majority of people, I would say, that were there from that group put their hands up and said they were favorably impressed, and that their increased connectivity, internet speed with Shaw Cable had improved their ability to work on the island. And interestingly, just to jump back to that, I thought that two of those people, maybe three of them, were either brand new to the island or just now moving to the island, hadn't actually moved yet, but were researching, what was available. So it does, give us an interesting picture in terms of our position as an island, a rural community, who also has first-class connectivity, for the most part, except for Ron's house.
Well, it's not just my house.
No, I know, and there are many, but
that's the west side.
But
It's
in
definitely
general.
not served by cell service.
No, well, one of our
Half of a
neighbors-
bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the same problem.
But again, that's what.
But comparatively, it's good, right? Considering what other islands have.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I would even say that there are parts of West Vancouver that the service is equally as challenging, and North Vancouver too. Part of it, certainly part of it is the topography, but also part of it is, in terms of doing a consultation for, let's face it, it would be a telecommunications tower. I think there's a similar culture as sort of the North Shore and Bowen Island, and probably a lot of the Gulf Island communities too, that there's a real question is if that infrastructure is truly necessary. And so it's challenging for the industry, and and here I can put on just my experience in working in telecommunications industry, that you're given a budget every year, and what can you build, and there's some communities that that there's a higher population where there's more, you're basically serving a greater population, and sometimes it's easier to get the infrastructure built than others. So again, if we articulated this in our digital strategy, something that we did want to improve, and build around that a certain criteria in terms of what we wanted to see into that improvement, I think that could be an interesting exercise. As we get ready for meeting with the other island communities, I think there's some lessons that we can share in terms of best practices. I think there's I think there are some things that Bowen Island has done particularly well that could be duplicated by the other island communities that would enhance connectivity in a way that's consistent with the island culture and sort of what you want to see and where you're going.
Yeah, well, I think that resonates well, for sure, with the upcoming Rhode Island Economic Summit.
Right.
So, the thought that comes to my mind is that a possible path forward, as opposed to immediately reaching out again to wireless carriers and talking to them about infrastructure, is thinking about in our plan how, and our digital strategy working group, how we celebrate and promote and develop our relationship as a Gulf Island or as an island community with technology. And that if we continue to promote or incorporate in our community plan, or in our economic development plan, the fact that we have this connectivity, we'll be in a good position to talk to carriers.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're embracing it or acknowledging it, and we're building our economy in part based on it. And if we show that we're doing that, then service should follow, I would think, in terms of
Can I ask
keeping.
Maureen, or Allison, what, I know this has come up before, council has probably dealt with this, have they not? People pushed for better.
Well, that's what started about 6 years ago, and I tried to go back and figure, but we did a big push to get, and we've had improved service since then. But again, it all boils down to, as Kristen said, the companies have a budget, and if it's gonna cost $1 million to put another tower out to service 5 homes, I don't think they're gonna do it.
What about the reaction from the community in terms of that infrastructure?
And then the other side is, I know Rogers was going to put another tower up, and I don't know if they ever ended up doing it. But there was a lot of pushback on where it was gonna go.
That's what I imagine.
And I think it had to go into Curtin Park, if I remember correctly, to pick up the unserviced areas. Because the tower's gotta go in the right place to pick up the unserviced areas. I mean, maybe it would be useful if we just had that technical, like you put a tower in order to service that thing, it's gotta have this line of sight, not these trees in the way. I mean, we had a satellite dish in the house for the TV, and we got rid of it because the signal, when the wind blew, you know, the trees moved, the signal pixelated, and, you know, that was, so we went back to the hard landline cable.
Well, I think
You
it's
know,
something
so
worth
those are
exploring, but how do we do this in terms of council? Like, do we, as a committee, ask council to?
Well, I don't know whether as a committee we could ask the service providers to, but I think we've got to identify the holes in the coverage.
Well,
and it sounds like a bit that you've done that, so.
Well, I mean, this is sort of public information and what's available, but I do think the advantage of inviting the carriers in is they can share what they believe their coverage is.
Yeah.
And then also identify where their coverage needs to be improved. Do they have any plans? Is it something that they plan to do in the next 3 years? And if they do plan to do something in the next 3 years, and if we think that it's important, we can maybe work with them to, you know, maybe if it's scheduled for 3 years from now, can we do it a year from now? What things would make it easier for them? What the area that they're looking in, you know, based on our knowing our community well and knowing our land use plan, what ideas can we put forward in terms of, you know, I'll go back to Griffin Park, I'll go back to, which I'm thinking of Doran Point actually, more specifically. You know, that may be a good location. We would not necessarily want to put a tower in that park. However, if it was nestled in the trees and it was a monopine, so it looked like a tree, and it gave great coverage both to the cove and to the park and to the ferry terminal, you know, then it's like, okay, well then maybe that's a possibility. So having those conversations quite often, it's a bit of a back and forth, but certainly understanding industry's perspective would be important. It's really hard to figure out what you need to solve without turning to industry and asking them what.
I'd be curious about their plans for 5G here as well. That might be part of that.
Yeah, that could be a question as well. It's what are your plans for?
So in the interest of time for our meeting today, because this is an ongoing discussion we need have. So Kristen, is in your thinking with the digital strategy group, is that like reaching out to the wireless carriers, is that like what kind of time frame do you think that would make sense? Like, is it something that we need to kind of get our ducks in a row? And
Well, I mean, I think we could do a similar step as to what was done at Bowen Island maybe 6 or 7 years ago, that it was a letter from the mayor to each one of the carriers. I think in this case, could just go to Rogers and to TELUS to just make an inquiry, and then maybe an introduction to our committee,
right,
to meet and to just gather some information. And it could be, for example, one of the carriers says, our service isn't, this is where we're strong, these are some weak areas, we don't have any plans in the next 3 years. Okay, then we know. If another carrier, maybe they do have plans. So I think just that information gathering could be helpful. And it's not to say that we would necessarily action anything necessarily, but I think just having that information could be helpful in terms of closing the loop on this inventory on connectivity. Like if there's something that we should be expecting in the next few years, it could be helpful.
So as Kristen's talking, I had a thought. UBCM is in Vancouver in September.
That's good.
And when it's in Vancouver, there's a huge trade fair and everybody's there. So I'm thinking maybe we either, Lori and I go chat with them.
UBCM is the United BC
Union of BC
Municipalities
Municipalities.
Conference that all the councillors
Yeah,
will.
sorry about that. The lingo again.
I thought it was something else.
And maybe we either go and chat with them there, or we ask to have a little bit of a meeting with them while they're there.
I think that makes more sense than
Yeah.
a letter from
Exactly.
the mayor. What
Exactly.
happens is we're asked to provide briefing papers. We can request to meet with any of the exhibitors, the companies that are
Yeah, so
present.
let's,
And it would be part of normal business.
Yeah.
The worry that I've been having is this conversation is proceeding is, this is not identified as a strategic priority for our council, and we're up to our eyeballs with strategic priorities. And to drop it into the mix as a council resolution, I don't think it would fly. Whereas if we put it forward as, or if we simply flag it as something that we want to do as part of
going
our
to
usual
UBCM
business at
and
UBCM,
meetings there.
that
Well,
we could do.
If I can, I'll be at UBCM as well. Why don't I introduce you both to the appropriate contacts? over
Yeah,
at
because
Dulles
like
and
BC
Rogers.
Hydro has a rep that is responsible for community relations and whatever and
Well, that's
areas.
great.
So
Yeah.
if we could do that, so
Mhm.
Maureen and I will take that.
So do we need an action item from
that's
from the digital roadmap committee to sort of prepare the request ahead of September's UBCM meeting? Yeah.
What I'm hearing is that you'd rather maybe just have more informal,
We'll
organic
start
sort of
it off.
conversation.
Just start.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could wait till UBCM, or I could just do the introduction to a few people over at TELUS and Rogers.
Yeah,
between
give
two
us
of
the
you.
names of who we should talk to and we'll try and say, can we connect with you at UBC?
It's just so you're aware that the sort of conversation about connectivity, it rests more with the radio frequency engineering team. So they would never be able to answer you sort of right on the spot at UBCM. But certainly if you were to reach out by email and just say, this is something we're interested in, it could, maybe the conversation could be continued at UBCM.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
And it would be helpful, I think, if you were to essentially prep us with the kinds of questions that are important to ask of the providers.
Yeah.
So is there no briefing paper in this then, official? You think I should flag for Hope?
No,
No,
No.
because she deals with the ministries.
Oh,
this isn't a ministry.
okay.
So where does all of this fit with the questions Wendy's had about?
About Colleen?
Yeah. Because it sounds like we've got good service,
Yeah.
so is there something,
I mean,
Well, we're not at the meeting service stage. We already identified that in conversations that, for instance, Steph and I had with some of the funding opportunities for for digital infrastructure. It's not infrastructure that we would be focusing on specifically, although that's what we're talking about now. What we're really talking about is what does it mean to our community? Now, you know, the fact that we do have, how are we utilizing?
So where does Colleen fit into all of this?
So I thought it was you who flagged that, which Colleen has an opportunity for us to engage about the roadmap, digital roadmap for the community. And that's just sitting there until we're ready to handle it. And then I felt that you were the one who was saying we should tell Colleen that, like, we're coming, we're not ready yet, but we would be interested.
Well, I
And
thought
then
when he
Colleen
was
said-
asking for us to commit, at least, you know, are we interested or aren't we?
Right.
But I still don't totally
Right,
understand
it's very hard to
what it
understand.
is that the output would be.
But then, so Councillor Nicholson was saying we shouldn't really do that until you get council in the loop.
No,
So
I
it's
was
just-
talking specifically about the conversations regarding Chalice and Rogers.
Well, at
Okay,
this
so-
point, the digital roadmap that Colleen presented to us really is, I think most relevant to this committee is the plan that we're coming together as an economic development plan. I mean, is a digital strategy part of our community economic development plan or not? And I think what we said following Colleen's presentation in our after discussion was that yes, it is. And what Colleen and her co-presenter said, that they're there available as a resource and that we need to drive it. If we come back to them with requests, they would be more than happy to act as a resource funded by the province for us.
So I missed the meeting when they made their presentation. What kind of support, resource?
What's the
Well,
strategy?
quite a bit in the sense that, you know, for instance, the big things that comparator communities, well, maybe not directly our comparator communities, but Tofino, and talking about, was it Nelson? And
They have a person
Housing.
called the entrepreneur in residence. There's
Yeah.
a man who would be at a beck and call.
To do what?
Well, they created, so for instance, the examples, Tofino was in their emergency preparedness plan and their digital strategy around that, and then how that enhanced community economic development beyond just emergency preparedness and so on, with resilient strategies for the community and businesses, business continuity strategies and technology around that. And so they're there as a resource to help us understand what's available and what's in other communities already. And for instance, how even communities that have had changes in their economic drivers, you know, loss of primary industry, then coming back with new technology or digital technology industries in their, you know, so there's lots of different things that they're working with all over the
So
province.
it's not the infrastructure to get the digital.
No, it's about
Yes.
how does that influence our community?
They wanted us to be a case study.
They wanted us to be
they're
case
looking
studies,
for
yes,
communities
yes,
to be
yeah.
actual case
Yes.
studies for this,
Digital
roadmap, this
Yes.
thing they're doing, right? So
So given the
we
meeting that
had, I think we had, that's what you had talked about last time. We let them know that we are interested, but, you know, it's kind of like on our timeline when we're ready to go
But I
there.
guess I'm having trouble understanding. I was thinking it was more helping us get the digital world working. To me, the infrastructure part, now it sounds like it's more, how are you going to use digital to encourage digitally based businesses and that kind of thing?
It's
No,
not just
no.
digitally based businesses.
It's about how you use digital connectivity to address whatever it is in your community that you want to do. So for instance, we now want to make a community economic development plan,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Digital strategy is going to be part of that, but it's going to be, it's going to be motivated by something that we want to achieve.
So for example, the meeting that we had with the telecommuters, teleworkers, and they talked about interest in shared space. So if we were to be a case study, and this is just an example, we could potentially be a case study of co-working on an island and how digital
Absolutely.
connectivity.
Yeah, that would be right
Yes.
down.
Is that
And then
kind
they,
of-
and then they
I
have
can
this
read
business
this.
consultant who's available to help you if you wanna, need some
Right.
assistance
And he could
with
say-
putting that plan together or whatever.
Okay, so he or she could say, in this community, that community, in the next community, they handled it in this way. That kind of
Yes.
resource?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe
Yes.
just,
Thank you.
it's how can technology solve your problems? How can you leverage technology to solve the problems that you have in your community? So a digital strategy is very unique from community to community. Just like Tofino focused on emergency services, using technology to solve that problem. So we have to take that step back and say, what are the biggest problems we're trying to solve, and how can technology help us solve it? In which technology, connectivity is the oxygen that allows technology to grow and thrive. So again, I'll just throw out this example because we've been talking a lot about wayfinding and how important it is to tourism and how important it is.
Those little black things,
Pardon?
those little Q marker things people can look at.
Hold on.
So here's an example of how technology then could solve our problem with wayfinding or public washrooms. For example, that maybe, maybe what we would do is in the Cove, we would have a robust municipal public Wi-Fi. So when people are at the wayfinding, we would also have them download an app that would actually let them with their phone find the information they were trying to find. So wayfinding would actually give you an indication of this, please download this app for more information. The wayfinding has the big stuff like the signage, but hey, what about bathrooms? Like the app would then download that information on where to find them, and it's something you can constantly update. If there's a festival in that weekend, like it's BowFest, you can update your app to give you more information on BowFest. So that would help tourism, which is a priority for our community. It would help maybe with the telecommuters who have people coming over for business meetings, and you could have some. So, anyways, I'm just throwing that out as an example.
You could link it to the ferry, so people would have some idea on a Sunday afternoon what the ferries are going to be looking like.
Right.
There's all sorts of neat things we can do.
It's endless possibilities.
Yes.
So what we did talk about at our last meeting, although, we talked about a lot about, first of all, starting with that inventory, but we did start about, we need to kind of consult with, groups. What are the biggest problems? What are the problems that we're trying to solve? And again, answer that question, how can technology help us? Because really a digital strategy could be, you renew your digital strategy every 3 years, like the City of Vancouver has done. Right? And I think I shared a copy of the City of Vancouver's digital strategy. They accomplished what they wanted to accomplish, but hey, they have new problems. So again, they're looking at technology to solve it.
Yeah. Okay, so in the interest of our meeting, let's move on to the next if we could. And this is obviously an area of the digital strategy that is going to be continuing and important for us to all get up to the same sort of familiarity with, so we can have a
I would suggest that at our next meeting, we maybe lay out an agenda, not a plan, but these are issues we want to deal with, these may be people we want to talk to.
I agree.
And we might also want to bring, I can't remember what that gentleman's name, see if he could.
I can find it.
See if he could actually join us for a meeting and just sort of give us some ideas about what's going on in other communities. I don't know if there's a cost to that. I would believe there
I
was.
don't think there's a cost. I think he said, I'm here for you, I'm really, really smart
Yes.
experience, just let me know what you want.
So we'll handle that at the working group level.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Okay?
And there were other resources that they had and offered, so we need to engage with them to fully know that. Okay, so what I think we're going to do for the balance of the meeting, if everyone agrees, is I'm going to start the Rural Islands Economic Summit Working Group report. Then I'm going to leave and hand off to Ed.
Okay, and I've got something to say about that too. 'cause
Yeah, exactly. So I think what I'm going to do is just share what I have to share, and then I know that you.
Sorry, Peter Elkin?
Yes.
Just
Peter
Peter
Elkin,
Elkin,
entrepreneur in residence.
Yes.
Yeah. Then Ed and I think Lauren probably both have something to say about their connection with the Rural Islands Economic Summit as well. But I'm going to leave you guys to do that. So in general, we're moving forward to on Salt Spring help organize the first Rural Island Economic Summit. The name summit is somewhat in question. But the idea is islands all the way from Malcolm and Sonotula down to the San Juan Island in the United States be involved in a get-together on Salt Spring Island. And the get-together is, it sounds like it's going to be an incredible opportunity, much like what we've done here on Bowen, for instance, with the community work. What was it called? The community, where we got together at Kates Hill Chapel and
Vital Conversations.
Vital Conversations. You know, they'll have that type of feel to it, I think, is what it's shaping up to be. They struck a few subcommittees as part of the organizing group. One is the executive committee. There's a programming committee. There is a sponsorship committee and essentially a communications committee, I guess would be the best way to say it. And so we are going to, as the group here, Natasha, Vaughn, Ed, and myself, participate on a call next week, which will be the second organizing group Zoom meeting with about 20 different participants from the different islands. We on Bowen are taking a really strong role in this because we've, as our committee members have agreed, we have someone represented on each one of the committees for the organizing committee. And that's very appreciated by Francine Carlin, the organizer, and the people that they have working in it. And I think it gives us an excellent opportunity, tying into what Kirsten was saying, is that you know, if we have something that we can add to this in expertise or by example, there's certainly going to be an opportunity for us to do that. Also learn from the other lines and connect with people who have similar values. Much more so than, for instance, even Vancouver Island does with the Gulf Islands. This is about what do rural islands have in common and their economic challenges and opportunities, weaknesses and strengths. So on the executive committee, what we are going to be meeting together in Victoria at the beginning of July, but there has been discussion about the potential, you know, does this meeting need to be thought of as something that has a follow-up? And what would that follow-up look like? And so possibilities that are out there are, well, another summit at some point in the future. Another possibility would be some sort of structure or either under an existing organization or into itself that helps islands as a resource work together with community economic development issues. There's a fellow from Malcolm, Sonotula, who is already employed full-time and has done a number of government funding applications, and I guess Francine has, including the rural dividend program. There's a possibility of, because this is already funded, this summit through Work BC and Western Economic Diversification primarily, and some local sponsors. But the question is okay, well, what happens beyond this? And so there is a discussion about, will there be an application for funding to create something that goes beyond it? Mm-hmm. So that's the executive committee, and then we're also, of course, looking at the budget and how it rolls out.
Quick question. What plans are there? Are there plans to document what takes place? How are they going to?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but we, in our committee meetings, are being actually taped and transcribed. So we had an hour meeting last week, and I got the very detailed transcription of our conversation. Okay. So I'm assuming if they're looking at that for the program at the committee level, there will be something coming out of that similarly, probably at a higher level, coming out of the event itself.
Good, because I mean the value for people who weren't there of good documentation.
And another issue is the number of people who can come, because there's a limited facilities. So we can't put we can't, like, probably couldn't put 8 or 9 people there.
Where are they holding it?
Pender?
Pender?
I think so, yes.
Sorry, what's Pender?
I think they're holding.
The actual summit
I think
is
so.
on Salt Spring.
It's on Salt Spring.
Okay.
There might be, I'm not
In
sure.
September, right?
In September.
What are you talking
In
about?
November.
Or November.
Yeah.
November.
It's September.
Okay.
Or Salt Spring.
I'm going to have to check my notes because
There might have been some, I don't know, maybe that's the name of
Could be.
the venue or something like that.
because yeah, let me double check that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely.
But the fact, it doesn't matter where it is right now. The fact is, it's limited accommodations.
Right.
So we've got to have a way to disseminate this.
Well, that's
and
why I
build it.
asked where it was being held, because Salt Spring, there's a fair number of accommodations.
Yeah.
Especially in November.
And I mean, there is an opportunity, of course, if we think that it makes sense for going forward for Bowen to potentially host something like this in the future. There's also potential for Bowen to take a lead in certain aspects of the work that comes out of it. Okay, so that's my part. I'm gonna have to excuse myself.
Okay, very good.
And
I'll take
thanks for
over.
taking over.
I'm not going to move that. The program, we had a programming committee. I've come in late on this, so I'm having to backfill knowledge. Right now, we are looking at 5 topic areas. And my question is, I need to go back and find the original proposal, because it's something about entrepreneurship, local capital, tourism, culture, and green and low impact are items that seem to be highlighted. And then there's a topic area called community issues that have impact, including transportation, health, housing, and broadband. And there's some discussion about pulling a couple of those out and making those full topics. And I'm not sure how this is working. I got the feeling in coming in a little later that people have a mindset about this, and I'm trying to find out why we're focusing on these particular 5 areas. The original needs assessment, when people were asked to rate things in importance, housing was number 1. And the rationale for not including it as a major topic area is there's so many jurisdictions. What would we get out of that? And the counter argument is, well, maybe we would get some idea how to cross jurisdictions, or some idea how to work within those jurisdictions. So I don't know how that's going to play out. They're sending out a new needs assessment. And again, it looks like they had a couple of these notions laid out in the original, for example, entrepreneurship, and you rated your interest and your importance. So I'm not sure if it was a true needs assessment, what do you really need, or if we're following some sort of structure in the proposal. And I'm trying to sort that out in my own head right now. I've had a little difficulty doing that. But, yeah.
Wait till you finish.
No, I'm done.
So do we, as a group, have opinions? Should we solicit
Yes.
feedback from the group as to our priorities and what they
Yes, yes. And I'm out of the loop beginning Sunday for 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm getting some things to them by the end of the day that I've been thinking about. So some thoughts about what would be critical topic areas. And we're also looked at a little oddly, because we are a municipality, we are so close to Vancouver, and I get the sense that there's this underlying...
Not as hardcore.
Yeah, exactly, yes, that's a very good way of putting it. We're not as hardcore island as some of the others. So, Vaughn?
Well, I'm on the sponsorship subcommittee, but we haven't met yet.
Okay.
So we're not meeting till next week. And I don't really, I gather that's more about, like they already have raised the money for this program, so, for this event, so it's more about what will we be looking at, I think, going forward? Where will we be applying perhaps for funds to go forward after this? I think is what we're talking about. And also how to deal with the sponsors. So the current, some communities, including ourselves, have given money, plus these other major funders, so how are they recognized? You know, how are they recognized? What presence do they have at the conference, etc.? That kind of thing, I think, is what we're discussing.
Which is interesting because one of the questions I asked, what is our program budget? Like for facilitation, and it was unclear at that moment. So there's a lot of amorphous boundaries to this that we have to.
Well, it is interesting that they are literally trying to engage as many representatives of these communities, and there's 13 or 14 islands involved, right?
I think they're up to 16.
16, okay. To actually, like, it started with the Salt Spring woman, Francine, but it's by committee that they're actually devising the program, and like, no, to be fair, they've already raised the money, so that's great. But you know, it's not an easy task to create the entire thing together
Via phone.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I ran into a challenge for me lately. We tried to secure the funding to build affordable housing. And that's probably on top of everybody else's agenda and island communities as well. And in talking to actually quite interested and potent lenders, I realized they know virtually nothing about Bowen Island. So for some we are just this quaint little island of eccentrics, others are more, but now I have to come up with a fairly accurate description about Bowen Island. That is mostly our social profile and the economic profile, and I have been asked repeatedly, what are the economic drivers in Bowen Island? Now, I couldn't come up with anything because
Construction.
that's out of default. It's about what I know, it's construction.
Wolfgang, we have a community profile
Yeah?
that was produced.
That's what
It was produced through the Economic Development Committee. Heather Pretty was the person we hired to do it.
Yeah.
It reflects the 2016 census
Okay.
data, and it does provide, I think, a really quite good sense of, there it is. A really
Well, that's
quick-
And there should be
very
a copy,
good.
a hard copy in the front office.
Yeah, so we can, it's online.
And it's not
We've
old.
tried
16, not much
It's-
probably has changed since
No.
then.
Well, we haven't had a census since 2016, so.
Yeah.
But the information about the economic sectors and so forth, it's all included in here.
Demographics.
Yes.
And it was one of the projects that we did fairly early on in this committee because of exactly the kind of problem you're talking about. People just did not know what Bowen
No.
was.
There you go.
So you're just telling me I can't take my vacation.
Enjoy.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Anything
Just
else?
emailed it to you.
All right.
Great.
Moving on.
Maureen, you were going to say something?
Before Wolfgang.
You were going to ask me, yeah.
I had a question for you. What was it? Well, you and I, we've done a lot of conferences over the years, and it's 6 months away, and that's kind of scaring me a little.
Yes.
And then the second point was that in very early conversations with Francine, I understood that the sponsorship task was also to raise money to bring participants to the events, to help with travel
Bursary type
costs.
thing.
Yeah, the bursary program. I don't know whether that's changed as an idea.
Well, I would
but
say
it was
this
part of the
committee
thinking.
hasn't met yet.
Yeah.
It's, so I'm not really sure what we're doing.
Should go to Harbor.
But that's a great idea, because I do think it might be a bit of a barrier for some, and it
Yeah,
needs
it
to
will
have, really good representation, so.
Well, the only other entity that would be able to provide any funding would be the Southern Gulf Islands Community Economic Development Commission. because the islands themselves, like the Islands Trust Committees can't provide, I don't think could provide funding for that kind of thing. And, for people to attend, and then Quadra and Cortez are electoral areas is, so.
Actually, I don't know, is it?
I'm just,
Wendy?
Wendy, are you still there? Wendy?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm still here.
Hi. Wendy, we're just talking about bringing participants to this Rural Islands Economic Summit. Do you think the province might be potentially interested?
Sorry, I think I understand the question. Could you,
Intended?
I'm just having a bit of trouble here. Are you asking if the province would be interested in the rural economic, the Rural Island Economic Summit in November? Is that correct?
Interested in the summit, but also the
Funding.
specific question we had to do with raising funds to help participants attend, essentially a bursary program. Is there anything that the province might?
Yeah, that is, yeah. I'll have to think about that.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't, I don't know the answer at the top of my head. I know that there was some initial discussions about trying potentially to look at the sixth intake of the RDP to see if they would, if they could put in an application. The only challenge there, speaking to folks in Victoria, was really the time frame for the review and the actual announcements. As you guys well know, it takes a bit of time, between 4 and 6 months, and that was what the RDP folks had told us. So that would, that may not work for the summit because it's happening in November, right? And application closes in August, so there will be a slim chance of any decision being made by November. So that was the only, that was one of the areas where they were kind of seeing if there could be, a possibility. But yeah, I'm not sure about supporting or helping, participants to attend the conference. Is that correct?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
If you could maybe give it, if there is a possibility that occurs to you, I think that would be helpful to pass on. Thanks.
Yeah, let me check with my colleagues as well. I think, I'll have a chat with Cheryl to see, because I know she works closely with the other islands as well. So I can definitely kind of bring it up to her attention and let you know what feedback you might have. So yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Community story working group. We've decided to postpone the photo contest until the fall. We found out that tourism has an ongoing Instagram summer program called Memories of Bowen or something like that.
Again, I told you, I
Yeah,
didn't really know anything
I know.
about it.
Something like that. And we felt that it would be confusing to possibly put two of these together, even though they had different audiences and different objectives. So we're going to restart this in the fall. Council updates.
Real quick, I refer you to the highlights, and just in relation to this committee, we gave Tourism Bowen Island
Yes, thank you.
a $5,000 increase based on increased staff costs.
Yay.
And we're also writing a letter to Flinro regarding the renewal of the Marina's federal water lot lease. Actually, they're provincial water lot lease. They've run into a little bit of a hitch in moving forward with completion of the float homes. And then there were quite a few other items, most significantly the water issues in Blue Water Park, but you can take a look at the highlights.
Thank you.
So we just go
Is there anything?
government,
No.
council meetings, council highlights.
Yes.
Excellent
Very good.
document.
Yeah.
Good. Yes,
A list.
that is helpful.
And you can sign up to get those by email.
As usual, I think, too.
Province, any updates from the province, Wendy?
Sure. As you guys probably know, the RDP6 intake is will be opening up on June 15th, tomorrow. I know there's been some discussions around Bowen's eligibility for 6 intake, or and whether there's a need to submit a letter seeking exemptions. So all that's kind of being worked out internally. Maybe just a quick, I guess, update on that front is we were hoping to have a decision finalized before the window starts tomorrow, but I think it's looking like it's more likely going to happen probably next week or thereabouts. So just a heads up that I'll probably get in touch with Steph and Councilor Nicholson to try to arrange a call with Bowen representatives and the RTP team if there's any decision that has been made by next week regarding Bowen's eligibility for the 6th intake.
Thank you.
Regarding the 5th intake program, just wanted to, it's more some logistical issues. There was a interim report that was due, I think, at the end of May. So if I can find out if Bowen was able to submit that interim report, does anyone know?
I believe that Kathy has been having discussions with, I don't know whether it's just with you, Wendy, or whether it's with Matthew, but given that our employee didn't start until Monday.
Not yet.
Oh,
No,
on
yeah.
Monday.
You're volunteering your time right now.
There is nothing to report.
Right.
But I understand the requirement for something to be documented and to go to the ministry, so or to the RDP. So I will, if you could give me an action item to talk to Kathy about what's going on with the reporting. We'll take care of it.
Okay, perfect. No, that would be great. And I guess just the last item, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, so there is an upcoming workshop on, just pulling up the information here, on disaster recovery and community resilience. It's happening for the Metro Vancouver area, and it's taking place on July 23rd, and at BCIT in Burnaby. So what I can do is I'll send the information to Steph, and Steph, if you could forward it to the committee members. It's looking at local exec officers, business continuity professionals, local government emergency program coordinators if they're interested to attend the workshop.
So July 23rd?
Yes.
Okay, so we have an emergency program management and executive committee, so, and an emergency program management staff person, so I'll make sure
She
that
knows.
she knows.
Is it possible I already received it, Wendy? If you wrote it to the, yeah,
Because
I
I
think
don't-
I've already forwarded to the committee.
Oh, because I thought it would have twigged if I'd seen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Okay, thank you. Tourism's left. The Arts Council, we're finishing up a very, very interesting show called Behind the Lines. It's contemporary Syrian art done by Syrian artists who are literally behind the lines. It ends on the 17th. I would recommend everyone go take a look. It's extremely poignant and moving, and we're starting a new, on June 19th, something called Summer Dreams, Local Artists at the Cove. So,
Nice.
okay. Staff, anything? No. Adjourn. Everyone agree?
Yeah.
Raise your hand.
Yep.
Okay, shout and jump.